Okay, I think we're up and ready. All right. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I think we are ready, Sharonda. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm so happy to have Sharonda Everson from Wells Fargo to join us for our last session on financial literacy. So as you may know, my name is Bernice Jenkins, and I am the Financial Literacy Director for the Southern region of the National Association of Black Accountants. And my goal is to create educational programs and a solid foundation for our organization to address the consistent wealth gap that we are seeing within our community. If you guys have been following us, and if you haven't had a chance to follow us, in the last several months, we've talked about several things under the umbrella of closing the wealth gap. Back in I think it was September, we talked about what does a solid financial foundation look like. Had two great sessions on that, so feel free to go back to our YouTube channel and check it out. And then back in October, we talked about your credit report and your credit score. And for those that may need to rebuild their credit or start building a credit history, we talked about different facets of that. Feel free to go back through our YouTube library for those sessions. This month, we have Sharonda Everson. Sharonda is one of Wells Fargo's top mortgage lending consultants. And we're going to talk about home buying, but we're not going to talk about home buying in the traditional way. We're going to talk about home buying through the lens of proper preparation and financial management. And Sharonda is very passionate about financial literacy. I love that she's approaches her clients from an educational standpoint. And so to next week on Tuesday, we about what are the things that she's seen in the market, because many people don't know how they need to prepare their finances before it's time to go and apply for a mortgage. And a lot of people are having to double back. Once you go through the mortgage application progress, then you realize I can't afford the right a home that I'm looking for, or I need to clean up something on my credit, or I need to focus on bringing in more income. I mean, it's things like that that we want you to be prepared for before you make it to the mortgage lending area. And so Sharonda will be helping us with that. But this session right now is really just to get to know her. An awesome individual, and I'm not just saying that because I know her, but Sharonda and I go back several years. We were both members of Black Girls Run several years ago in Birmingham before she moved to Atlanta, and I've just been so captivated by her Facebook post around financial literacy based on what she's seeing on her job. So I asked her to come and help us share that on this platform. So I'm just going to ask Sharonda a couple of questions so you guys can get a chance to get to know her. And then we'll be back right here on Zoom next Tuesday to talk about the time preparing your finances so that you can get the home that you desire. Anything is attainable. All your dreams certainly are, but it does have to have proper preparation. And you really do need to have the tools from an educational standpoint to get there. So without further ado, Sharonda, I'm going to ask you a few things. Would you mind starting off by just giving us your background and how you eventually landed into the financial services industry?
Wow. So I graduated high school in 99, and then I went off to college. I went to an HBCU in Alabama, still college, and I knew that I wanted to major in business. Okay. So I went into business. I didn't switch my majors or anything. I knew I wanted to be in the business arena. And for my senior year of college, I got an internship with I would say with a real estate agency and a community development corporation
Mhm.
at the same office. So I got my start there doing an internship. And from that internship, I got offered another opportunity to work part-time with one of the top mortgage lenders in Tuscaloosa at that
Okay.
time. That was around 2003, the spring of
Okay.
2003, a few months before I graduated. And then just being in that industry, this person was a top producer at the time. 2003 was hot. Everyone could get a home mortgage and all of that. And so I started learning from her the business and learning how the process works. And that's always been fascinating to me. So
Mhm.
that's how I got in the industry, just from being connected to people in college and then being offered a job in the industry. And I've pretty much remained. So since
So, wow. So you're going on a good solid 20 years.
going on, yeah.
So I would imagine that means that you've seen all types of experiences. You've seen all types of people that come through that may have needed some help. So I can see how that may have fueled. So that kind of brings me to my next question for you, because after 17 years, you have built a passion for financial literacy. And can you explain what is it about your work in this industry that has fueled your passion for financial literacy?
What has fueled my passion for financial literacy is a combination of two things. One, me personally going through my own ups and downs and learning about the right and the wrong way, or the proper and improper way to handle my finances and handle my credit. And then also seeing what people go through during the home buying process, particularly the financial piece of it.
Okay.
Is add to that passion, of course, me being a Black woman, is seeing what different cultures do in that preparation, seeing what they do,
Oh,
seeing
that's
what they
good.
don't do.
That's good.
And it is sometimes it's a culture shock, especially depending on how you grew up and how you were taught
Yep.
about finances
If you
directly.
were taught anything at all. Yeah.
Yes. And even sometimes learning like, oh, okay, this way it's normal, but it's bad.
Mm,
This way is normal, but this is how it's supposed to be done anyway. And seeing how different people do it, different cultures do it, it made me passionate enough to at least explain to people, okay, this is what the bank is looking for, but this is also areas where you may be hustling backwards, or you may just making things totally unnecessarily hard for yourself.
right.
You not even realize it.
Right. What do you think, and this is just a follow-up from this particular question, but based on your experience, what do you think is making people move backwards in the home lending process that you're seeing from certain cultures? And I'm assuming you mean people from the underrepresented communities. You probably see, what are some of the common things that you're seeing that's tripping them up in the home buying process?
Typically, what I see is a lot of people put their money in places that do not benefit them in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are not taught this
Right.
is how you build longevity. Some
Right.
people are taught this is how you look good. This is
Yes.
how you look successful.
Right.
This is how you be good. This is how you be successful.
Yes. 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 Yes.
It's a totally different. And another thing is, it doesn't really matter too much how much money you make, because you can make a lot of money and still be broke, depending on where you spend your money.
Come on with it, girl.
I've
Yes.
seen people make less than $50,000 a year,
Uh-huh.
and they own multiple properties.
Wow. Wow.
And see people in different areas of different cultures making $150,000 a year, but because their money is being designated to other areas, it interferes with their path for wealth.
Mhm.
And we talk about the wealth gap,
Yes.
but there's also a wealth information gap that we need
Yes.
to get into.
Yeah, so in our one of our prior sessions, we talked about one of the statistics that was recently published that mentioned that even at the same income level, African American families are still generating less with the same amount of money.
Absolutely.
And so I like that you're highlighting things that is probably being picked up in that statistic.
Absolutely.
What about things like, because I think things like car loans can be major hindrances in
Mhm.
mortgage, and that's probably one of the things that you do see with like school loan debt and things like that, right?
Yes. I think one of the harshest realities is
Mm-hmm.
that there are industries and sub industries that are designed to market people, to encourage them to spend their money on things that do not build wealth.
Yes, right. And
So
before
even,
we
even with,
move on,
I'm
um,
sorry,
before we move on, what are some of those things that are being spent that's not generating wealth, that may be wasteful and in our earning in terms of our wealth building potential?
unfortunately, it's a combination of a few things,
Okay.
but unfortunately, it's student loans
Mm-hmm.
or educational opportunities that do not yield the income that
Oh,
would be
okay.
needed to repay that money back,
Mm-hmm.
car loans, and also lack of family planning.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one too. Okay, thank you. I wanted you to spell that out because you know, we do have the opportunity to create our financial life,
Yes.
but in a lot of instances, our financial life is being created for us, and you find yourself in it instead
Mm-hmm.
of active about creating it for the level of financial freedom for yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I asked you to list some of those things, because I need people to kind of know what we're talking about so they can evaluate their own situation. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, this isn't to make anyone feel bad or out of place or anything like that.
Right. Right.
You don't know what you don't know. And I think many of us, especially, there's a lot of us that have had to rebuild,
Yeah.
myself being one.
Me
That's one
too.
of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this, because what I have learned later in life after having to rebuild was things that I wish I had have known, but there was absolutely no way I would have known it. It's not something that was passed down to me from a generational standpoint. And so
Right.
I
Right.
think that's another reason why we struggle with the wealth gap. And that's why we're here today to talk about things and to challenge the way that certain cultures or pockets think when it
Yes.
comes to money and handle money. Okay, very
Mm-hmm.
good. So I had another question for you, because I know that you use your platform and your job from an education standpoint, and to the extent that it might not line you as much commissions for it or whatever, right? And I know that mortgage lending consultants sometimes can have a bad rep, because they might be pushing people into mortgages for their own personal financial gain. So I
Right.
want to ask you, when people are mortgage shopping and they're working with the lending consultant, can you help them figure out what is it that they need to look for when deciding who to work with, so that they aren't being taken advantage of?
Well, it's a combination of a couple of things. It depends on where the home buyer is mentally and emotionally
Okay.
when they're getting ready to home shop, because there are different loan officers out there that are all about sales. And in
Mhm.
some area of sales, you're supposed to tap into someone's emotions to get them to buy.
Okay. That's a great. See, I didn't think about that. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
pay attention to where you are mentally, emotionally, and also financially.
Mhm.
Um, because that is going to, your energy is also going to attract what you want. So if
Mm.
you appear desperate
Okay.
and impatient, you're going to possibly be drawn to a loan officer that's going to play right into that. And the educational piece that you may need for home buying will be lacking because you don't have the energy
Mhm.
and capacity to receive what you need.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. So when you're talking about an emotional setting when you're going into this process, are you
Yes.
talking about fear and anxiety? Are you talking about anxiousness? I mean, what is some of the
I would say this.
okay.
Sometimes you have to sit back and be like, okay, you want to be a homeowner, and that sounds good,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to look at your purposes. It may not even be all that deep. Some people just say, I want to be a homeowner. That's it. But sometimes you have to count the costs and
Right.
what it takes to be able to maintain what you want. You can get it,
Mm,
but there are certain things that you need in order to maintain it. There are several people that have purchased homes, but they didn't have the capacity or the education that they needed in order to maintain it.
I
It's
see.
kind of like relationships. Everyone wants a good relationship.
Yeah, but you got to put that work in.
Hello. So it's paying attention to that, and also paying attention to where you are financially so you can have realistic expectations. Sometimes when people are shopping, they want what they want and
Mhm.
want to know what it takes to get it. And
Okay.
sometimes you may be, as a home buyer, you may be given information that you may not want to hear, but
Right.
need to hear. For example, you may want a home that's $500,000. It's your dream home. You've been praying about it. You've been thinking about it and all of that. But
Mhm.
where you are, you may need to put a little bit more in order to get that house rather than starting off small and working your way up. Some people don't want to start off small and work their way up.
Right, right. I think that this is an excellent point because what you're really talking about now is just getting below the surface and understanding your why um,
Yes.
for your purchase. Um, because you can go to, especially a lot of these new builds, you walk in, they got all the great upgrades. It
Yeah.
smells wonderful. You start imagining yourself there. You start
Uh-huh.
imagining. And here's a big one. You start thinking about where you came from and
Yeah.
this is
I
an
deserve
upgrade.
this.
And and then you get so caught up in this mama, I made it mentality that you can overextend yourself in a sense too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. So I like that idea. For example, when I first purchased my home, I've been in this house for about 14 years. It's a starter home. It's a townhouse. I didn't plan to stay here as long as I did, but I was a bit tempted to get something a lot bigger because I can afford the payment. But
Mhm.
um the wisdom in me was like, okay, you can do that and you'll never go to the top floor because you're going to live on the bottom floor, pay extra money for wasted space. You can
Absolutely.
do else with that money. So I purchased a home that was functional for me um,
Mhm.
at the time. And I'm still here because it's working. And even I think about, well, I can buy another house that's a little bit bigger, which I could, but then I think about that bigger mortgage payment and I'm like, man, I can go on some trips with that money. So these are the things that you have to weigh and take the emotion out of it. And so I see that's what you're basically saying, right?
Yes, and that's going to lead into when we have our conversation on Tuesday.
Mhm.
I'm going to talk about the top 10 things that people need to consider
Oh, I can't wait.
purchasing a house, and it's not always financial.
That's right. It's not. It's not. I think we spend too much time focusing on one number, and that's the mortgage payment.
The mortgage payment.
About all the other things with it. So I'm so excited. I'm so excited about this next week. I'm just excited.
Me too. I speak to at least 7 new home buyers each week that are wanting to obtain mortgages. And I tell you, I learned so much, and I have to actually get to know them, and I care about what I do. You know, I really do, because it's a big decision. And sometimes people just want you to be genuine and walk them down the right path rather than just trying to sell them on a loan product. You know, they trust you. They trust you to lead them down the right path, not just try to sell them on something that'll give them a great commission.
Right. So I'm going to ask you one more thing along that line, because I know you're going to talk about the top 10 things to consider before getting a mortgage. But my last question was right along that line. Can you tell the people why it's so important to plan ahead? I know we kind of touched on a little bit of it, but can you summarize why that's important?
It's important to plan ahead. One, you need to know what you're working with, where you are right now. You gotta know.
Yeah.
You gotta know where you stand.
Right.
And two, you also have to think about your future, because sometimes we make plans based on our future, and that's a good thing. However, you got to start where you are, because where you want to be in your future, you may have to go through some things, and having a high mortgage can't be a part of that, or won't lead you to where you want to go in your future. You need wiggle room.
You need wiggle room.
Yeah, you need wiggle room to grow. It's kind of like, it's somewhat like, you know how you start from the bottom and shoot straight to the top, but you didn't get the lessons that you need in between. And then you come back down, you're like, So it's important to plan it. And then also, you want to give yourself an opportunity to try to speak to people that have the experience with where you're going.
Yes.
So you can get some guidance. A lot of people say, well, I did all this by myself. I ain't have no help. But there's an abundance of resources there. On the internet or through your network. People can guide you. You don't have to be in this thing alone.
Right.
And especially if you come from a family where you don't see people progressing financially. Or, you know, just wealth wise, you know, you don't see anyone in your family doing it. Sometimes you may have to plan ahead and branch out and speak to people in your network or your circle or your new circle, so you can say, okay, what do I need to do to get prepared? Do I have to have 20% down, or can I go ahead and buy a house with the 5% that I got? So you can know. Knowledge is power. Knowledge
is power. Proper planning is power. And
here's another thing.
Go ahead.
Why you should plan ahead is so that sometimes people have fears in their head, and they created those fears. And sometimes you need to speak to people that says, I know you may be scared, but you can do it. And this is why, this is how. So you can be encouraged.
Right. That's awesome. And I like that you mentioned the steps, and as far as, you know, shooting so high that you didn't learn what you needed to learn before you got there. So you're really highlighting sustainability, because once you get there, you got to have that staying power as well. Yes. Of the right foundation, where it doesn't bankrupt you in a sense. And I'm not just
Exactly.
financial either.
Yeah.
I've heard the term being house rich and dirt poor.
Yes.
And I'm sure you see a lot of that in your industry.
I see a lot of that, and I try my best. And I try to feel people out. I go with the spirit. If I see a person that's on that path, when there's a window of opportunity, I at least try to ask, I know you want this
Yeah.
and you can do it, but do you think this is the best path right now? Does this fit in your 5-year plan?
Right. Oh, that's awesome. And I think everyone should have a 5-year plan.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if you have children, especially
Yes.
if you have teenagers that are going to college.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, even one key example, I had to tell a customer, okay, the mortgage that you're about to get is $2,500 and it's in the prime school district that you want to be in, but you have 2 teenagers. 5 years from now, can you see yourself paying for college tuition and a $2,500 mortgage?
These are things we have to think about. Yeah.
So, and that no one has told them. Anybody else would have said, well, yeah, you arrived. You will be there, but you won't stay there. And then on top of that, when you get into that bracket, you're competing with people that have had an advantage and their parents have planned ahead.
Yes, yes. And I think as far as mortgages are concerned, because how owning a home is one of the many ways that people build wealth. But
Yes.
I have witnessed or been around people that have grown up in another economic environment than I have. And
Yes.
I learned that it was much more common for their parents to give them the down payment on the house.
Absolutely.
So they're walking into their homes with equity already. I'm not saying us in terms of just one community, but I'm just saying versus people may not have grown up in the economic surrounding.
Yeah.
You're really struggling to get to that. So we have to save a little bit more, or things like that, as opposed to trying to find a higher interest 100% down type mortgage and things like that. But you got to have the education to know what's important.
Yeah. And you have to make sure that you position yourself to not be so distracted with other things that you miss the financial education piece that is basically, it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't know what you know, and you don't know what you need to know. So that's the goal of our session. And I like that it's not going to be a traditional mortgage session, but it's at a house, but let's talk about how to get prepared.
How to get there.
So, okay, wonderful. So we're right at our 30-minute mark. And so this was just a high level introduction, so you can get a chance to see how passionate our November speaker is regarding financial literacy as it relates to preparing for your home mortgage. So Sharonda will be back to give us the top 10 things that you need to consider first before preparing for a home mortgage. So I'm so excited to have you next week, Sharonda. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And I hope that you guys will join us next Tuesday. I believe that is November 10th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, 6 p.m. CST. You can also find this information on any of our NABA Southern Region social media outlets as well. And we'll be back here on next Tuesday. Thank you guys again for joining us.